So, is this an undead puppet? Hey guys, MasakoX here, and welcome to part 2 of my mini colour theory series that Haverok and I have been devising for the month of June to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the original colour theory video. We are now in part 2, Electric Boogaloo, Revised Edition, Empire Strikes Back, and Two Towers, uncutted version. Yeah! More colours. In the last episode, we talked about the basic colour theory that we originally came up with in the very original video, and whether it actually stood the test of time, whether there were some aspects that were incorrect or some that actually worked, and whether we could actually add to things. Fortunately, for the most part, it turned out okay. We had to revise a few aspects of it, but it all worked out for the better. And if you want to check out that video as well as compare it to the first one, you can check out links to the video in the description and up top. Today, thanks again to the brilliant contributions from Holy Mountain over on my Discord server, we're going to be continuing on with a thread that we devised about at the end of the last video, and that was concerning Zamasu, and particularly with his relationship with a Saiyan body. No, not like that. Only Cell gets to touch their perfect bodies. Concerning Zamasu and Goku Black as well as Merged Zamasu, we just thought it was simply to do with the colour of the aura and the white hair, that it all reached full enlightenment and was at the top of the chart, the crown, the Sahasrara. Well, I mean, at least for a while, because we all know that he ended up just turning into a big pile of purple goo. Purple goo of justice! Holy Mountain, on the other hand, had its own perspective of the whole thing, and upon reading it, it made things all the more sinister. When we take into account Zamasu's previous wheelings and dealings, he is the definitive fallen angel of the dragon world. He's something more akin to the likes of Lucifer. He had good intentions to begin with, but was slowly corrupted and changed his ways. What did Zamasu do to create the being known as Goku Black in a parallel timeline? He used the Super Dragon Balls to transfer his consciousness into Goku's body, and thus, metaphorically, killing Goku. In short, Guy switches bodies with Goku, a la many teenage dramas from the 2000s. But this time, this being has a divine soul. The Goku that we know and love is pretty much dead, but his body lives on as some kind of shell to enact some kind of deeds that an extraterrestrial divine being has in store for the mortal population of the universe. Be that as it may, Zamasu may be all-knowing and powerful, but he hasn't really come to grasp fully with his divine soul and powers. He didn't learn the whole package from Goasu. He did have raw talent, and many people talked about that in Universe 10. He was a Kai in training, and he would slowly get up the ranks. I mean, give it a couple hundred years. I mean, that is like lightning speed for the worlds of the Kai. He was a prodigious trainee in Universe 10, but, you know, trainees, if they don't have the proper training, can still fail. Despite being only half-baked in terms of training and ripe for corruption, Zamasu still knew a lot of things when it came to being a divine person. He was able to tap into the full genetic power of his body, centering it around the consciousness, which for Zamasu is pretty much easy because the whole ego thing, you know, he's got a lot of it. All of this tapping into your body's power had to come from somewhere, and for the longest time, we thought Zamasu had just focused on the upper part of the chakra spectrum, but no, he had to get it from somewhere else. We're talking about the other way, people. We're talking about from the Earth's core, which is the lowest aspect of chakra possible, and it's centered around black. Now, what do Zamasu and black have in common? But Masako, Zamasu doesn't have black ki! You're wrong! Yeah, you're kind of right, but remember the first time when Goku Black met Goku for real in his own dimension? Or at least the first time that we saw him meet his past self. I mean, we're not going to get into timelines here. He had a black ki with a purple core. Why was that exactly? Well, it might have been down to the fact that Zamasu hadn't got quite to grips with the full power that Goku had yet. Like with Captain Ginyu in Z, Zamasu was still trying to figure out Goku and his power and hadn't quite fully tapped into it yet. Prior to the events of episode 47 of Dragon Ball Super, Zamasu, or we'll call for the time being just Goku Black, thought that what power he already had in his base form was pretty much it. It could take on anyone on the planet, including Super Saiyan 2 Trunks, and that was good enough for Zamasu. He knew about Zenkai boost and could tap into it because every single Saiyan has that. But in terms of Super Saiyan 2 or whatever trick that Trunks could do, he didn't think that he could do either. When it comes to Goku's body, Zamasu didn't know how to push the right buttons and turn him on, as it were. Before he witnessed for himself that a Goku body could do Super Saiyan, Zamasu had to craft his own powers with the tools that he had at his disposal. When Goku Black went into the past and fought Goku at Super Saiyan 2, he was roundly beaten and realized that he was just not strong enough to enact his plan. There was someone that could spoil it. It opened the door for maximum potential for Goku Black and Zamasu. He needed to properly carry out his Zero Mortals plan with every ounce of power possible. How do you do that exactly? Hacks. He needed to hack into the inner workings of Goku's body like a necromancer. Now, before you get any ideas, we're not talking about a necromancer in the classic sense of the word. We're talking about a more Dragonball friendly kind of necromancer, something that you can show the kiddies on a Sunday morning cartoon show. The original necromancy, as well as the term itself, is derived from Greek mythology, and the word necros, meaning dead body, and the word manteia, divination in the means of. And as that portmanteau of words would imply, it meant that if you had the powers of necromancy, you could communicate with the dead. It's sort of like a seance, but a little bit darker, more sinister means of communication. And that is actually more common in Dragon Ball than you might think. King Kai and Goku do it all the time. King Kai does it with pretty much everyone else. They can communicate with the other world as if, you know, it's just a phone call. Does that mean that most of the Z Fighters are honorary necromancers? Huh. Neat. Anyway, let's not get sidetracked anymore and let's just focus back on Zamasu. His particular style of necromancy is more akin to something that we would see in regular pop culture. Images of a user manipulating a body as if it were a puppet, as it was just some kind of strings and they were able to put their magic into it and thusly create a whole new being. Using very nasty and dark magic. Really milking the fact that this magic is evil and should not be used lightly. Bad juju. When Zamasu started to hack into Goku's body, he realized that he had to do all of this really quickly. He had no time to dawdle, because with Goku, it took years to be able to get these powers. He does not have years. So Zamasu had to pump in extra spiritual energy in order to do so. What would have happened had that wormhole not sucked Goku Black back into there? He might have been slain or indisposed. Therefore, the Zero Mortals plan would never have happened. Maybe that's a what if. He had to do something that Goku never did, and that is to tap into Goku's anima. Anime, Masako? Anime? I love anime, Masako! No, we're not talking about anime, we're talking about anima. There is a difference, so let's elaborate on that a little more. We have to look into the works of Carl Jung, a famous psychologist, and his own ideas of the anima and the animus. In short, they are two anthropomorphic archetypes of a person's mind. The way he describes it, the anima and animus are sort of elements and archetypes of your subconscious, something that lurks deep inside your mind. It's something that transcends our own personal psyche, something that we can't just tap into at will. It's beyond us. It's like our masculine side and feminine side. So for example, in the subconsciousness of a man, there is the anima, which is the more feminine aspect. It works both ways, because inside the subconsciousness of a woman, you would find something that is known as the animus, which is the more masculine side. In other words, Zamasu had to tap into Goku's feminine side. Now this is something that our own original Goku never knew how to use or even knew he had, because remember, Goku and psychology? Yeah, you'd have to ask Nappa, because he did study psychology with a minor in pain. This was perfect for Zamasu. This was a whole new realm of potential and possibility that Goku never knew he could do. So, you have to exploit the anima, then mix in your magic, and you could get something really good. Zamasu had to almost kind of just quickly come up with something, really hodgepodge it in there, and then boom, you got Goku Black and what we see. His own spirit, Goku's physical capabilities, the anima, the divine powers, you get a whole new Goku Black circa episode 56. And then when you get to episode 64, you even mix in your own person from another timeline. In terms of raw power, it was successful, up to a point. As we saw towards the end of the arc, Zamasu was doing things in a hurry, and thusly, the entire thing fell down because it was just purely unstable. It didn't take too much disruption and pushing away from the status quo that Zamasu was used to or preparing himself for, and it just all came untangled and just with purple goo of justice. Zamasu was broken both physically and mentally. He became unhinged because the plan was falling apart, his mind was unraveling, it was all just going wrong, and Zamasu, in his own state of panic, didn't know how to handle things going wrong. He'd been used to things going right. Zamasu didn't know the intricacies of the Potara, which is something that Gowasu knew and was shown to us. Gowasu offered to fuse, so that means he could show how it works, but Zamasu turned it down, so oh, the hubris! That's what you get for rushing things, kiddo! Okay, that's enough of Zamasu right here, because we did talk about Jiren in the last video, so let's touch upon him briefly. Fortunately, his own ideas are much simpler. Let's talk about his chakra and why he's so powerful. What was all that about? And it wasn't just the fact that he trained himself to absolute strength physically. Jiren is a being who has perfected root chakra, or the Muladhara. After decades of training, he had reached the absolute pinnacle of what a mortal could do, or at least a mortal in Universe 11 could do. He also had ultimate vitality and stamina, and lacked the emotions that made a mortal a usual mortal. So therefore, he could push himself even more. He had no bottlenecks or restrictions, and so therefore, he could just keep pumping in the power no matter what happened. He was essentially a living, talking calculator in terms of his fighting style, which shows exactly why the sneak attacks that I've talked about before were so successful against him. He was able to predict things that were in front of him, but if something disrupted it, kind of like with Zamasu, and a little bit of discord erupted and emerged, Jiren wouldn't know what to do, and therefore, all of that power would count for nothing. When it comes to Jiren, he cannot stand a variable. Variables are chaos to him. If you want to take a Western idea as to what Jiren is like in terms of his power and style, you would have to look to Marvel's Hulk. It'd be like fighting him. If you were able to outsmart him or were unpredictable with him, you could get the upper hand despite being faced with absolute strength. It'd be fearful, but it's possible to beat him. That's why Goku's initial victory against Jiren in the two-part special was down to the fact he reached Ultra Instinct, something that Jiren didn't anticipate. Jiren realized that he had to do something different, and he tapped into his emotions, which worked for a little while and staved off Goku, but opening himself up fully was just not something he did, and his body and mind it didn't work out. That's why Goku, 17, and Frieza were able to ultimately beat him towards the end of Super. Ultra Instinct as well as emotions gave Goku the effective win. And there is more to talk about with Ultra Instinct than meets the eye. We did touch upon it briefly in our video that we talked about in October when the whole thing came out, but there are still things I wish to share that we know now. So stay tuned for the next part, where we not only talk about Ultra Instinct some more, but also Vegeta's new, bluer form. So what do you guys think? Do you feel like you understand Zamasu a little more? What about Jiren? Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!